Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of the book Empire of Silence by Christopher Ruocchio. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but yes. This was a weird one for me. Sun Eater, Book 1, and I like the Red Rising series. I had heard stuff about this, so I'm like, oh, let me check this out. This one took me a bit to get through because it is a strange book. It follows kind of similar kind of style of kind of like Dune, of this vast intergalactic empire, all the political kind of intrigues and stuff, but more along the lines of kind of Game of Thrones kind of level things. But I think my biggest issue with this is that it is written like a autobiography by Hadrian Marlowe, and he is at least at these kind of points, he is a whiny little shit. Now I did sympathize with him and empathize with him of like, okay, his family wants him to do all this kind of shit and everything, but it's him just kind of ruminating on the same stuff over and over again that kind of got annoying. And the interesting thing is like talking about like the war between mankind and the Selsin, translated in classical English by Tor Palos of Nov Belgair on Colchis. Other thing is this does a lot to mix together a lot of different words and phrases from a lot of different cultures, which also kind of slowed me down because sometimes every so often, boop, 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 oh, I've got to either go look up in the back to see what this means, or then try and figure out what's kind of going on with it by looking it up on the internet, which isn't a bad thing, but it slows it down and almost is like every so often I get chucked at the source of like, hiya! It's like, okay, slow the fuck down. Like, it's making me slow the fuck down and be like, what the fuck's kind of going on here? Okay, who is he dealing with? What is this kind of thing? What is their kind of relationship in this? And then he's continuously kind of whining about certain things. So he is, let me see here. I'm gonna make sure I do this right. They do have a kind of thing, like, about everything going on here. We've got Hadrian, and then his brother Crispin. We see them kind of dealing with and training of what's kind of going on. We get this Colosso, where they pretty much put on the games. Hadrian's not into that, and the thing is, he wants to pretty much be a scholiast, which is kind of like a scholar, like Gibson, but his father wants him to be put into the chantry and pretty much be like a torture kind of dude, pretty much to get more influence for House Marlowe into that kind of realm, because they're kind of connected to the Emperor, but they kind of want, he pretty much has Crispin as the one that he's going to be the heir to Devil's Rest, and he does not want to be that. They're pretty much religious zealots and do a lot of crazy shit, and we get more of that as we get into the book and see, oh shit, yeah, he really would not want to kind of be in there. It's mainly kind of like, oh, this sucks, like, kind of get it, but I understand that someone would do that in an autobiography kind of like this, so I mainly put it down to that kind of style, which annoys me, rather than the actual story itself, if that makes sense. I might check out more of the books in this series. It didn't completely and utterly grab me like the Red Rising series did, but it didn't like the back portion of it got enough of it into me to be like, I would like to see what's kind of going on here, because he escapes Delos with the help of his mother. However, he then wakes up on this planet Amesh instead of the Scholiast place where he was supposed to be, and something went on with the crew, so he pretty much lives as a street urchin for a good couple of years before going into the Colosso, which he pretty much wanted to avoid, not be into bloodshed, but he was doing this to survive because he learned from his master in arms. And then he decided to go kind of stupid, and we see that there's a captive Selsin. He's like, I want to talk to this motherfucker. And he does, but then he gets captured by the lord of the planet, Balin. Wait. No. Yes. Balian Matero pretty much learns who he is and decides to pretty much have him as a tutor to his young children. And Ais pretty much kind of clings to him a little bit. And then we get introduced to Volca? Okay, that's all the other people. Volca Ondera, who's pretty much investigating Xeno civilizations, alien civilizations, because we got the Umand in here, which are utilized as a slave labor class, but they're just human supremacy is very much a pushed on kind of thing, but the Umand are like a fuck you at a certain kind of point. It's like, holy shit. This, of course, leads this dude, Gilliam? Yeah. To continuously insult Volca. She is from the Demarquis. Pretty much to the point of, like, someone that's outside of this empire. But yet, if you go after her ass, the Marquis of Tavros, you kind of would do some incidents. However, Hadrian is pretty much in love with her and decides to do a duel with him. But he has been out of practice, and pretty much Gilliam puts him in a situation where he has to kill him, and it just fucking breaks his ass. It's like, now that point, it's really kind of weird. I'd rather have more of his ruminations on these kind of things, these kind of failures, rather than the stuff that we keep kind of get. Like, I understand you want to be a scholiast. I understand that you don't want to be in the chantry. It repeats it just enough to start to annoy me. But then we start moving on from this, and he kind of goes into a self-imposed exile with her and her pretty much patron as they're exploring these ruins, and we get into a kind of wider kind of understanding of the world. Humans are pretty much being like, yeah, we'd attacked all, bitch. And then we've seen these things built by what are termed by the Quiet. However, this is pretty much considered heresy by the Church Chantry, and Hadrian's kind of exploring more of it, understanding it's like they've pretty much been fucked over by Imesh. Well, not fucked over, but like Imesh's weather system has done a lot of crazy ass shit, but it's still standing. They don't know what this material is. Hadrian gets some kind of information from this thing and brings it up and is understood with like the Selsun, and then of course we see that the Selsun are looking for these people as well, and that they are connected with this. Alright, what's the world? Orga sauce? Not sauce. Okay, I pronounced that like a fucking dipshit, but no. At least I can look through these things. Vorgossos. 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 Sauce? Sauce? I don't know. Saying it out loud makes it sound vastly weirder. Alright. See, the thing is, the Selsun then pop up, and the thing is, they're thinking it's a kind of invasion, and this leads to other kind of things, because we learn about their hierarchy a little bit, because Hadrian's the only one that can speak Selsun. And he is then utilized by the Church Chantry to question mainly this captain dude, but there's also this noble thing, child, heir that belongs to a leader in the Selsun, and they're looking for the Quiet, the builders that came before, and are looking for all this, and there's no bodies that we've seen, anything like that, and we see this kind of thing with Hadrian getting some kind of vision about like what's going on with the Selsun. He explains it to Volca, but she doesn't really believe his ass. They have a kind of contentious relationship because she views the Imperium pretty much as or the human empire as barbaric and everything. However, they have been kind of talking through and being able to kind of go through certain kind of things. However, Hadrian is all like, there's this whole Palatine kind of thing with the upper nobles and everything being pretty much recorded and having to be very careful of what and how you say. So he is able to talk with her. However, she has what they call demonics, like advanced tech that she's able to like block that shit out. Because there's like a war with the humans on certain kind of things with these advanced AI and computers and shit. So they pretty much put very strict limits on technology, on that kind of thing. However, the Demarchy doesn't have that kind of shit. We've also got extra Solarians, which are humans that have been like, I'm in the dark, bitch, eat my ass. Fuck you, man, I'm a pirate. Viking shit. Sometimes yeah, sometimes yeah. Kind of shit like that. I know that's kind of weird, but yeah, I'm trying to get across that they're not. I don't think they're aliens, because they usually talk about their aliens because of how kind of rare they kind of are. But we do see that he is able to take out the Selson captain as a kind of thing for him, and they kind of want to go and see this kind of world because that's where they got this kind of treasure world, Vorgosas. Sound weird. Supposedly a kind of treasure planet. That's where the Selson kind of learned about humans because they had interacted with humans before, and that's kind of like a weird thing. They're like, what the fuck's kind of going on? So he puts together a team, mainly that he cobbles together from the people that he had in the fighting pits, because when he was in the fighting pits in the Colosso, he was pretty much making plans to utilize his birthright to buy a ship and for them to fuck off. So, however, he finds out from Balian that his father and grandmother disinherited him, so he ain't got shit. So Balian was pretty much going to marry his ass off like that. However, Hadrian's able to think of this and be like, hey, because the Legion's pretty much there, and Rain Smith's like, alright, we need to do something. He's like, let me do this. And she's like, fine, fuck, you're conscripted, build your team, let's do this shit. So he gets Volca, he gets all the people that were pretty cool from the Colosso, he gets like his friend Switch that felt betrayed learning that he was like a Palatine and stuff like that. However, they get over it, especially after going through the whole kind of duel with Gilliam and now this, and linking them up. So it kind of ends off with him pretty much being conscripted in the Legion, having this weird little ragtag group going on. And it's like, this sounds more fun for me at this point. I mean, it took a lot of kind of going and chugging, and it's mainly down to, I don't even really think it's the writing style, because after we get through a certain kind of point, mainly after dealing with the noble kind of stuff, where it kind of feels like it just kind of repeats certain kind of things for me. Not to the same extent where it's like, Anais throws herself at Hadrian, and does this thing again, it's not as like that, they just like, Ross and Rachel just like chuck shit at that, but it's just like kind of felt more kind of wheel spinny to me. And then when we get the Selson kind of stuff going up, and then kind of linking us up to getting off of the mesh, is where we really start getting into interesting kind of territory for me. I don't mind seeing him kind of brought low and kind of exploring his kind of shit that he had to do to kind of survive in the street urchin kind of phase. But it felt... I understand they're doing it to kind of flesh out his character, understand where he's come from, what he's attempting to do, and kind of moving on from there. However, it's really kind of navel-gazing because of what you got to do with the character, because he's like, oh, this, that, and the other, and it's inherent to kind of like utilizing the autobiographical kind of nature of what you're attempting to do here. It's not bad, it's just not one that I usually go for, and this is kind of like the first kind of example of a book that I've read that's done it like this fiction-wise, where it's like, this is an account from this dude. It's like, interesting. Usually I'm already in the person's head of what's kind of going on, or somebody else's kind of character is kind of exploring or explaining what's happening. Rarely is it like, this is how this kind of happened, depending upon what's kind of going on and how long this motherfucker has lived for. I do like that we get things in the back for like planets, house lineage things, and also words and everything. So me being like, what the fuck? It's not that we have different kind of words. I'm glad that we've got this. It's just sometimes I'm like, is this a word that this motherfucker made up? Or is this a word that I gotta look up? And then that kind of slowed me down on it. Because I like to have an idea of what I'm dealing with as I'm reading it. So that's what kind of stops me on certain kind of things. I don't mind looking that stuff up. But when I'm doing it more and more often and trying to figure out what's kind of going on, what's the kind of relationship of what's going on with a different kind of word, I like to look into that. Like, we've got the Judeans that pop up as well. That was kind of interesting because they were dealing with the Selsons as well, and were kind of helping out Hadrian. Hadrian is actually gifted a high matter energy sword by, what's his name? Nope. Nope. Who the fuck are you? Wider Worlds. Sir Aloran Nilta, a Mace Kolos swordsman of the Fire School. That dude was pretty cool. He's this kind of older dude, and I was like, alright, let's kind of see what goes on with this. But they're another kind of faction that's not in the Empire, but the Empire kind of deals with. They were kind of visiting to look at the stuff, the ruins, when everything went to fucking shit and we had the Selsun pop up. Now, there were Selsun kind of stuff in the outer system at one point. However, this was just one. I was like, we were trying to look for shit, and they're just like, what's fucking going on? And them torturing was just completely nuts. That is where it kind of went more into like, alright, where I kind of got my interest kind of renewed. Whereas before I was kind of like slogging through this and being like, I don't know if I'm really into this. The ending kind of cinched it up and put it into a little kind of better place where I would definitely look into another book to see if this works out, but I don't know if I would go completely full on the series. And that's not to say that it's badly written or anything like that. I do think the author does a really good job of showcasing this asshole doing his kind of shit. Now, I mainly say that he's an asshole because of how he writes. I.e., the dude writing his biography more than the author. Does that make sense? Like, I don't think the author's bad. It's just like the dude writing his own account's like, what? And the thing is, this dude actually did a story in, like, one of Thor's milestone issues. I'm like, oh, that's kind of really cool to learn that shit. And I think I kind of enjoyed... I don't know if I remember his part specifically, but it was a pretty good milestone issue. So I'm like, hey, that's kind of fun. It's... Sometimes you get people where they write an autobiography about themselves and it just goes fucking... But... if you're into kind of Dune, they talk about, and like the Red Rising, this would be more along the same kind of wheelhouse. It's mainly down to how it is written. And it's more of a subjective thing for me on that kind of part, rather than me saying it's objectively bad. I'm just like, dude, get out of your own ass sometimes. Trust me, I'm a dude that, like, trust me, needs to, like, get out, like, I understand that kind of propensity to kind of, like, sit in your own shit and everything like this, but this dude's like, I'm like, come on, Booker, come on. Yeah, the only kind of technical ones is, like, trying to figure out what is a word that's made up for this, so I go back to the correct glossary page in here, or one that I had to look up outside of what was going on. And that's just slowed it down a little bit pacing-wise for me. That made it like, eh. But after we got through a certain kind of bit and I was able to get that kind of acclimated knowledge, it moved a little bit better. And then we got even better when we got into parts of the story that really kind of interested me. Of like, all right, we got these Selsun here. Now we've got Matero trying to figure out what to do with them. The Chantry being like, let's torture the shit out of these motherfuckers. And of course that doesn't work. And of course that we get the Legion involved and be like, nah, bitch, I got this. We need to do this. And even though she was in there for a little bit of it, Rain Smythe was a very interesting kind of character. I liked how she attempted to balance all this shit and no nonsense and be like, it really sucked that she greenlit the torture to begin with, but she's like, fuck this shit, screw that shit, we're taking this Selsun, we're attempting to figure out what's going on here and learning more about this and if we can do this, because Hadrian pretty much put this shit in motion, being like, we have to do better, we have to figure out what's going on here, and got the Selsun to surrender in the first place. This is, at least according to his account, the first time that this kind of thing happened, and of course it unleashes this whole can of worms, him then being forced to pretty much be the interlocutor, the translator for all this kind of torture shit, and being brought in, like, he tried to escape the Chantry, and then being brought in as pretty much someone to do this kind of torturing. Now, he's not completely and utterly, he's not forced to do the torturing, but, I mean, you're pretty much a part of it at that point when you're seeing everything. and then of course talking with his Selson, learning that he has honor for this dude, and then attempting to do this, but like the Selson dude's like, I'm gonna kill your ass, you bitch, and it's like, oh fuck. So it actually goes down to a fight, but he's able to win out in the end. And then, of course, gains the information that sets us off on the next course of action. Which the next course of action sounds a lot more interesting to me to see how it kind of works out with his ragtag group, how he deals with being conscripted into the Legion, pretty much being his ass owned, and by Rain Smythe, and then having to answer to now Captain Basander Lin, who he had headbutting things going on with in the first place of trying to get the Selson to surrender, and evidently shit goes weird off down the line because of the foreshadowing that he talks about in his biography. So there's a lot of interesting kind of things that play with that. It just took me a little bit to kind of get there and be like, alright, I get you. I understand being in a really shit spot. Trust me on that. It's come on, motherfucker. So, those are my opinions on the book. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.